I did want to talk about some, overarching NFL news, specifically with their upcoming media rights deal. As plenty of you saw last week, the NFL and ESPN announced a major partnership going forward. ESPN and their parent company Disney have acquired the NFL Network. They've also acquired NFL.com's fantasy offerings. They've also acquired NFL Red Zone, naturally as part of NFL Network. So now all of those media offerings are now going to be under the ESPN and Disney content umbrella, in exchange for a 10% equity stake in ESPN for the NFL. I'm assuming that 10% is going to come out of Disney's 80% that they currently have in ESPN. The other 20% of that is coming out of Hearst Communications. I haven't really been able to confirm that from any sources that have come out so far, but I'm assuming that's what it's going to be. Just some other, facts about this deal. Red Zone, NFL Network, ESPN Fantasy, or NFL.com Fantasy, all being absorbed into ESPN. ESPN is getting more NFL games on the NFL Network as a result of this merger. Obviously, all those Thursday night games that would usually be on – Thursday Night Football is on Amazon now. But, a lot of the games that would traditionally get slated for the NFL Network, a lot of those being like the 9:30 a.m. London games or the Munich games and stuff like that, those are going to be probably going to get ESPN crews, manning those broadcasts. NFL Red Zone, we're unsure, of any sort of major programming changes with that. Like, I guess we'll have to see. But just a very, very interesting deal for ESPN as they've made a lot of changes in recent years. Obviously for any baseball fans, they're moving away from Major League Baseball broadcasting. Obviously, Major League Soccer many years ago has gone over to Apple TV, so they've kind of got a lot of free space on the network to just kind of slot in a lot more football. And it's kind of a focus that we've seen ESPN shift to over recent years. But I think a lot of people were shocked just by the sheer size of this deal. I don't know if you thought that, Jordan, but I just wanted to kind of get your thoughts over on this deal.
Yeah, I think it's interesting, number one, because ESPN or just Disney in general is like trying to blanket and create this umbrella into every media possible. And when you're one of the biggest media companies out there, that's kind of what is going to happen with the type of system we have. But on top of that, I don't think it's all bad because I think ESPN has actually done a really good job when it comes to NFL coverage in general, at least from the analytics side, which I take a big interest in, and in terms of who they've been bringing in to push the game forward on NFL Live, some of the other shows that they have as well. I think they have done a good job. I think there's some areas where if they put certain big media personalities in certain spots, wink, wink, Stephen A. Smith, Pat McAfee, unwink, wink, we're going to see that drive down. And I know people like Pat McAfee. I know some people like Stephen A. Smith. I think that's just for clicks. And I think that's just for hot takes and for quick news is to go to those people. I don't think those would be the people driving this new level of content that ESPN has acquired, especially Red Zone. They said Scott Hansen's still going to run it this year. I'm assuming he'll continue to run it, for at least the next 3 years. I would hate to see someone else take over, but it's going to happen at some point, whether Scott moves on to a new opportunity or they replace him, whether he retires or they just get rid of him. Who knows? That's kind of just my only worry, but that will happen eventually. So I'm just happy it's not happening now, because I think Red Zone is the biggest one everyone has a hang up on. But I think people like Mina Kimes, Ben Solak, some of the NFL alums that they brought in, Allen Robinson. I'm trying to think. There's another former NFL guy. Dan Orlovsky is what he does with the VR is so sick. If anyone could check that out, they do QB VR where he in real time is diagnosing defenses how NFL QBs do it. And it's one of the coolest things. I think it looks janky as hell, but I think it's one of the coolest things ESPN has done in recent years. With the NFL personalities they're bringing in, the analytics personalities they're bringing in, you're seeing this mesh of true ball knowledge. I feel like where you have people who watch film, people who dive into the analytics and marrying it together to really see, hey, who are the top NFL players, rather than NFL Network putting out their top 100 list. And it is clearly shifted from the actual top 100 to clickbait and seeing who, like, just to stir controversy, right? Because that just clicks. That's what matters, right? So I think it's going to be good long term. I think a lot of the short term hangups are going to fall by the wayside. And I think something interesting Roger Goodell brought up is that Red Zone could expand to other sports. And I don't think Roger Goodell would say that if that wasn't already in the works, like college football, baseball, hockey. You could even see tennis, basketball, like there's soccer, like Red Zone could be so unique and great into different sports, and especially college football, where we're going to see multiple top-ranked teams playing at the same time. And instead of having to multi-screen on YouTube TV, someone's running the show. And I would love to see Andrew Siciliano come back into the fold, because I know he ran the alternative Red Zone for the NFL. If he could do college football, and again, it depends on his knowledge base. Daniel Jeremiah is someone I think also could do well with that, since he's a big-time scout for NFL Network. I don't know if he'd be interested in running a show like that, but I think the easiest shoe-in for college football is Siciliano. And then you could keep Pat McAfee on game day and run the show from there. Because, again, like Pat McAfee is who he is. I think he actually does a good job with game day. But as an analyst guy, I want him as far away from that side of ESPN as possible. But yeah, I think it's a good move long term, especially with the potential that is there. Will ESPN capitalize on it? We'll see.
Yeah, a lot of great points. I kind of wanted to respond to a couple of them. First, like the personality part of it, right? Obviously, we've seen a lot of ESPN offerings in the last couple of years. They've really looked to try and make their broadcasts, specifically game broadcasts, more accessible to, maybe a casual or even an uninterested viewer, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think the two biggest things, right, are the Manning casts on Monday Night Football, and then on the baseball side of things, obviously this is going away once ESPN stops broadcasting MLB, but inspired by the Manning cast on Sunday Night Baseball, then they had the A-Rod and Michael Kay cast.
Mm-hmm.
And I think honestly those are great. Also, I can't forget during the national championship game, they literally have a Pat McAfee like on field cast, right?
Yep.
I think all those are great. To be honest, I don't watch them because I don't really feel like, for me as someone who's just trying to get like a really, really deep like understanding of the game that I'm watching, I feel like I don't really need that. You know what I mean? But I also feel like they do have their advantages for a lot of viewers. And what's great about this deal that ESPN is working on, for anybody that's kind of worried that watches the game, like I watch the game or like you watch the game, that's worried that these broadcasts are going to get overtaken by, kind of more casual, fun-focused broadcasts, I think we're fine. I really do, because again, ESPN is launching this direct-to-consumer service later this month. That's kind of going to become the replacement for ESPN Plus. That's going to launch on August 21st. It's going to be like $30 a month. I know a lot of people in WWE circles are talking about it because WWE pay-per-views are going to be on that going forward in 2026. But with that broadcast, I mean, it's all streaming now. We're not locked to two linear TV channels, right? Where like you're worried that the broadcast that you want to get is not going to be available. Like they are going to have the options available for you. So I really think that's fine. Yeah. And going on your second point with an expansion of Red Zone into other sports, we've definitely already seen some other sports try and take advantage of that. Obviously, Apple TV with their MLS deal that's been going on since I think 2022, they have really focused on, a lot of people like to call it Red Zone, but I feel like a lot of people got to remember that it's called Red Zone because the Red Zone is the football Red Zone. But, if we're talking in sort of like a generic term, like a Kirkland brand term for that type of coverage, It's called whip around, right?
Mhm.
Because you're whipping around from game to game, match to match. MLS has started their own version of that. That's gotten pretty popular, and it's gotten to the point where not only is Apple TV trying to get people to watch the whip around coverage, but the MLS, because they're only being broadcast on Apple TV with select games on Fox Sports 1, they've completely changed the way that they've scheduled games over the last couple of years, where they've followed an NFL style of broadcast, where instead of, games, you got a Thursday night 8:30 game, a Tuesday night 7 o'clock game, and then like a bunch of games tipping off throughout Saturday and Sunday. You've got pretty much, with some variation, a Wednesday slate of everything starting at 7:30, and then you've got a Saturday and Sunday slates with everything starting at 4 games starting at 4:30, 4 games starting at 7:30, and then you got like 1 or 2 games going on at 10:30 p.m. And all of that is specifically designed to make the whip around coverage more compelling. And for me, I thought that was incredible to see. Not really in a great way. I was just kind of in awe that MLS would want to do that with their coverage.
Yeah,
because it's like, oh wow, we are totally focusing on a red zone style broadcast. Like I just thought that was incredibly remarkable. On Major League Baseball, the MLB network, they've got MLB Big Inning, which is, they kind of whip around to the different local broadcasters of any games that might be going on kind of a weeknight. And then in the NBA, you've got on NBA TV, NBA Crunch Time. So yeah, I could totally see this expanding. I think it might get a little complicated because a lot of these other leagues, aside from MLS, don't have like as centralized of like a broadcasting nature that NFL does. Like the NFL is never on like local networks.
No,
you know what I mean? It's always on like the big three, like over the air networks. So I think they have the advantage there. But yeah, I could totally see, ESPN wanting to expand this to a ton of other sports. So yeah, it's going to be remarkable.
Absolutely. Yeah. And to your point about, I think there's ways to do it for other sports that make it compelling and interesting, right? Because like in the NBA, it's like NBA, NHL, soccer, obviously, it's constant action. Like there's constantly moving going on outside of timeouts or fouls or whatever, right? So like you would just have to find a way to like, based on the flow of the game, pinpoint. And if they do implement it for other sports, besides soccer, because soccer already has a base for it, it's going to be a mess to start. It's completely fine, but it's a good mess because you're going to get eyes on it, and it's still going to be constant action. Like, are the transitions going to be as perfect? And not that Red Zone is perfect itself, but like I feel like they've done a really good job of highlighting, based on game flow. Even if a team's not in the red zone, if they're driving, they throw them on now. Like if they're at the 40 about to cross the 50 and they were in their own end zone to start, they're throwing that on even though they're not in the red zone. Like they're like, hey, this team's picking up steam, momentum, they're driving and come back, or they're trying to expand their lead to make it harder for the other team. They're putting that on screen. Where I feel like it used to be even 3 years ago, it was, hey, if they're in the red zone, this is on. If no one's in the red zone, we're just going to put whoever is closest, right? Like, it's like, I don't want to watch a red zone clip of a team in the red zone if they're up by 3 touchdowns, about to go up by 4, right? Like, that's just, okay, cool. I'd rather see the team that's close and competitive. And they have really shifted that. And that is now it's just so much better for the consumer. And that's why red zone has grown the way it has, is now it's not just nonstop action, it's nonstop meaningful action.
Yeah.
And I know we've talked about it on previous podcasts before, but I think people with how big red zone's going to become now across all sports, at least I think that's where it's going. It's going to be the level of people that are going to be bored during big primetime games because the action isn't nonstop, and it's going to create this kind of this rhythm of people want to see nonstop action, and then you see games slow down. Takes are going to get even more extreme. Well, this guy isn't as good as this guy. I was like, well, that guy's on red zone constantly because his team sucks, and he's only in 1 and 4 o'clock games, versus this quarterback has 6 primetime games, and you're seeing actual football be played, and you're only seeing them complete 60% of their passes. Like, you can't say someone sucks because they play more prime. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, no, I see what you're saying.
It's takes that have been happening in football. They're going to happen for a lot of other games. So it's just, it's up to people like us to say, hey, football's more than primetime games, more than the red zone. All these sports are more than these little intricate moments. It's the whole sample size that you have to look at, right? And I think that's something we're kind of straying away from in sports media in general, and I want to kind of help drive to push that back, which is why I wanted to – this is why I pitched the idea to you, a month ago or a couple weeks ago, that I want to do podcasts like this, and people will, as they're listening and watching, they'll kind of see how this is going to flow, but I want to focus more on the things that actually matter for football rather than just looking at the macro stats and looking at, hey, this is, this quarterback had this many yards, he's so good, or this quarterback had this, had a lower TD to INT ratio, so he's worse than this guy, right? Like, football is so intricate and so complicated and tough to bring down to the micro level in a way that's absorbable and understandable, where it's not just black and white. There's a lot of gray area. Hence why, this wasn't done on purpose, but, gray shirt, gray area kind of works out.
Absolutely. And before we get into our first team that we're going to be breaking down, I did want to give one more take on the ESPN deal. If we can get more episodes of NFL Matchup with Sal Paolantonio and Greg Cosell at a more reasonable time than 3 a.m., I'd really appreciate it.
That's a great call.